Great Demon King, Chapter 27. Hot damn, I'm awesome. All right, then we set off in 2 days, Fanny announced with a charming smile, sliding a delicate hand along the edge of her laboratory table. Use these next 2 days to gather anything you need for the journey. As for your usual errand duties, don't worry about them. I'll arrange for the school authorities to transfer those tasks to the other 3 for now. Han Shuo's heart gave a sudden lurch at her words, though not because of what she'd said. Rather, he found himself momentarily mesmerized by the graceful lines of her face. She always looked stunning, but whenever she smiled, it somehow made her beauty even more enchanting. Her lovely features stirred an instinctive desire in him, a response that had intensified ever since he began practicing demonic magic, where urges were not meant to be suppressed but embraced. Before he had come to inhabit Brian's body in this alternate world, Han Shuo's former existence on Earth had been, at best, underwhelming. He had never achieved much in life or in romance, and by the time he died, he was still ignorant of any real intimacy with a woman. That dormant longing had followed him here. Only now, in this new and unfamiliar world, he felt free from the constraints that had once held him back. The strengthening effects of his cultivation in magic, both demonic and necromantic, fueled his confidence. Whereas he had once been too timid to even daydream about beautiful women, he now found himself toying with the notion that he could, and should, pursue them. He gave Fanny a slight nod of acknowledgement, fighting to keep his composure. Understood, Master Fanny. I'll make my preparations. Fanny's sparkling eyes trailed after him as he departed her lab. That boy, she thought, shaking her head with a gentle smile. He's changed so much in such a short time. At least he seems more stable than before. Confronting a summoner's dilemma once out of earshot, Han Shuo's thoughts swiftly shifted from admiration for Fanny to a problem he needed to address right away. His little skeleton. That skeleton had become a crucial secret weapon for him, one whose enhanced abilities and resistance to light magic set it apart from ordinary undead creatures. But with an upcoming trip outside the academy grounds, there was no guarantee he could keep it close without risking unwanted attention. If he tried to hide or store the skeleton in some random place on campus, it might wander off or be discovered. Worse yet, if he lost mental control over it, it could expose all his hidden activities. He recalled that in necromancy, most people didn't bother summoning the same dark creature each time. Yet his little skeleton was anything but ordinary. He needed it, and he wanted to make sure he could retrieve it on command. Unfortunately, Han Shuo had no idea whether sending the skeleton back to the other dimension would sever his bond with it forever. That meant there was only one person who might hold the answer to his dilemma. Fanny, the teacher of necromancy. If anyone could confirm how to resummon a specific creature from the other dimension, it would be her. So, after making up his mind, he headed straight back to the necromancy department's main hall, searching for an opportunity to speak with her privately. Getting the information he needs the moment he spotted Fanny again, deftly organizing a stack of meticulously labeled magic scrolls, Han Shuo approached quietly. Master Fanny, he began, lowering his voice out of respect and caution. I've been curious about something. Are the dark creatures we summon always different each time? And say, if we banish a particular creature back to the other dimension, can we summon that exact one again later? Fanny turned from her scrolls, a light frown of puzzlement on her lips. Brian, that's a detail that only real necromancy apprentices or novice mages usually concern themselves with. Why are you asking? Han Shuo cleared his throat, hoping he sounded natural. Well, Lisa was asking about it. She figured I run errands for her sometimes, so she wanted me to get the answer from you. He offered an innocent shrug, working to maintain a mask of earnest helpfulness. Fanny's face relaxed into an understanding smile. That girl. She does have a lot of questions. Very well. As you may know, each time you summon undead creatures from their dimension, the spell draws a single entity, or multiple entities, roughly matching the summoner's mental strength and incantation. Because all skeleton warriors or zombies of the same level are generally similar in power, nobody usually worries if it's the same skeleton or not. Han Shuo bobbed his head in acknowledgement, heart thumping. But what if you want one specific undead you've summoned before? Something special, that you don't want replaced by another random one. Fanny picked up a nearby quill and tapped its feather tip against her chin thoughtfully. In that case, the key is leaving a magical brand on the undead. You inject a special seal into its very bones, quite literally. Then, whenever you cast the summoning incantation again, you focus on that brand, which lets you precisely recall the same entity from the other dimension. Han Shuo couldn't hide the flash of elation in his eyes. Yes, this is exactly what I needed. but he forced himself to nod calmly, as if this news was only for Lisa's sake. So it's definitely possible then. That's good to know. He paused, feigning a moment's contemplation, and then added, I wonder if Lisa's learned the specifics of how to do that. Amused by his pretense, Fanny lifted one of the half-finished scrolls, carefully returning it to a wooden rack. I'm not entirely sure, but if she's advanced to novice mage status, she might be capable. It isn't overly difficult, although it does demand decent mental strength. She set down her quill and rummaged in a small drawer, eventually producing a thin piece of yellow parchment. With a few deft strokes, Fanny penned out the incantation and instructions for the brand, her lovely handwriting flowing smoothly across the sheet. She waved the paper gently to dry the ink, then offered it to Shuo. Here you go. This outlines the chant, the gestures, and the best way to harness your mental strength for the brand. Please pass it on to Lisa for me. Shuo accepted the note reverentially, clutching it like a priceless artifact. He forced a pleasantly dumb grin. Thank you, Master Fanny. She'll be thrilled. I'll go give this to her right now. He turned on his heel and practically bolted out of the room. Fanny watched him go, chuckling softly. What a gentle-hearted boy, she mused. All the torment Lisa put him through, yet he's trying to help her in return. If only more people in the world were that forgiving. Midnight in the cemetery late that same night, under the pale glow of the moon, Shuo crept into the abandoned cemetery, behind the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Ever since his fateful escapade here, a near-death encounter that led to refining the little black skeleton, Shuo had been returning periodically to practice necromancy in secret. This remote, overgrown graveyard, dotted with crooked tombstones and gnarled trees, was the perfect place to train undisturbed. He stood in front of a battered straw dummy, specially propped up against a half-buried gravestone. Closing his eyes, he visualized the incantation he'd spent countless days perfecting. Oh, endless darkness, transform into a destructive arrow of bone, and under my will. Bone arrow. A faint swirl of dark magic surged in the air, gathering into a small, sharp projectile. With a whistling swoosh, the bone arrow shot forward and struck the dummy square in the chest. The straw dummy shuddered on impact, stuffing bursting from the new hole. Yes! Shuo pumped a fist in triumph, a grin plastered on his face. After so many thwarted attempts, where the arrow had fizzled, veered off course, or disintegrated mid-air, he had finally mastered this low-level necromancy spell. The sense of accomplishment surged through him. I've nailed it. No mistakes this time. Off to one side, the little black skeleton had, summoned and refined, stood guard, its hollow eye sockets vigilant. Its body had long since turned a shade of inky obsidian, and 7 menacing bone spurs jutted from its spine. Right now, it held a wickedly sharp bone dagger, scanning the corners of the graveyard as if it fully understood the importance of keeping watch. With a slight tug of mental strength, Shuo beckoned the skeleton to his side. Immediately, it blurred into motion, bounding across uneven ground toward him. He couldn't help but notice how it glided over roots and scattered headstones with unnerving ease. A trace of pride and satisfaction flickered within him. The refinements he'd done under the guidance of demonic magic had enhanced the skeleton's physical abilities more than he dared hope. Shuo inhaled the chill night air and focused on the freshly inked instructions from Fanny, technically meant for Lisa. He needed to place a dark seal on his skeleton, ensuring that, no matter where he went or how far he traveled, he could always call it back from the other dimension. Otherwise, if he accidentally lost track of it, or had to dismiss it, he might never see it again. Calming his nerves, he traced a peculiar series of gestures in the air, then began chanting the incantation step by step. My loyal servant, in the name of the summoner, I leave upon you my eternal mark, dark seal. No sooner had the words left his lips than a dense, blackish aura formed between his hands, spiraling into a compact sphere about the size of his clenched fist. Shuo's mind reeled from the sudden drain, and he realized with a jolt that this advanced seal demanded more mental strength than a typical magic apprentice would have. Fanny's notes had been intended for a novice mage like Lisa, after all. But I've come this far. I can't falter now, he thought, gritting his teeth. Waves of dizziness rippled through him, but he forced himself to maintain control over the condensed aura. It hovered in front of him for a heartbeat, crackling with ephemeral strands of darkness, then drifted into the little skeleton's ribcage. In that instant, Shuo's entire body sagged from a crushing sense of fatigue. He stumbled backward, gasping for breath, and flopped onto the ground. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead, and his lungs felt as if they were on fire. What a close call. He'd tapped into deeper reserves of mental power than ever before, and it left him both drained and strangely exhilarated. Yet as he fought to steady himself, something else clicked in his mind. A sliver of Chu Kanglan's ancient memories, a nebulous chunk of knowledge about harnessing magical treasures, suddenly sharpened in his awareness. The words, "harnessing magic incantation," flickered through his thoughts in a clarity they'd never had before. He had no time to delve deeper, however, because a strange whooshing sound broke his concentration. Peering up, Han Shuo was utterly taken aback. The little skeleton was now moving on its own, rotating its wrist in a swift, fluid motion. Gripping its bone dagger with deadly intent, it launched into a rapid flurry of strikes at the straw dummy. Each blow landed with such speed and force that fragments of straw scattered in all directions, and the dummy quickly resembled a battered pincushion. In mere seconds, it had been torn to shreds. Watching this explosive display, Han Shuo couldn't hold back a burst of incredulous glee. He let out a triumphant laugh that echoed against the leaning tombstones. "Hot damn, I'm awesome," he roared, half in disbelief at how well the branding had worked, and half intoxicated by his own success in amplifying the skeleton's abilities. In that moment, panting on the damp ground with the moonlight casting wild shadows, he felt a rush of possibilities. He was no longer simply Brian, the hapless errand boy. He was a budding practitioner of both demonic magic and necromancy, forging an unnatural bond with a creature that, so far, exceeded all normal expectations of what a low-level undead could do. With each risky step, each new brand or refinement, he was drawing closer to true power. Still breathing hard, Han Shuo steadied himself with one palm against a mossy headstone, slowly climbing to his feet. The little black skeleton paused in its frenzied assault, turning its empty eye sockets toward him, as if waiting for further commands. He took a moment just to regard it, noticing how the gleaming spurs along its spine seemed slightly sharper than before. The swirling infusion of the dark seal had indeed added a new dimension of strength. "From here on out," Han Shuo murmured, "no matter where I go, you'll be able to follow me or return at my call." His face split into an exultant grin, a raw satisfaction buzzing in his veins. "This is the best gift Master Fanny couldn't have given me." He could already imagine the looks on people's faces if they discovered how formidable his little skeleton truly was. Yet he knew he had to be vigilant. Revealing too much too soon might provoke unwanted suspicion or even fear, especially from the stronger forces within and beyond the academy. Still, the knowledge he could rely on this undead ally and resummon it at will filled him with renewed confidence. Even as fatigue continued to gnaw him, a fierce resolve took root in his mind. Tomorrow, he would leave the academy's walls for the first time on a field trip with Fanny and the others, venturing into the wider world. It was a perfect opportunity to keep honing his abilities and, if fortune favored him, to push his cultivation to new heights through real battles and tangible risks. And if obstacles arose, well, he wasn't the same helpless Brian who once cowered in the shadow of others' cruelty. Between his growing magical yuan, his newly branded skeleton, and the demonic resilience that allowed him to embrace pain as a catalyst for strength, he felt ready for almost anything. The memory of that stunned expression on Daniel's face, or Fitch's angry frustration, floated through his mind. He let out a soft, confident chuckle. "Just watch," he whispered to the silent tombstones. "I'm going to become someone this world can't easily push around anymore." And